I have a pretty stuff around 11, so but hopefully we'll be able to get through everything. Excuse me. Okay, so starting with what we're looking at for our next full body meeting. Looks like we have a June 2nd projected date. Does anyone have any concerns about June 2nd? Let me look at, and I'm assuming Matt will be running that meeting. Because I'm trying to minimize until the 15th of June. But let's see. I don't know that we even have session that day. I'm just trying to check to make sure that it won't be an issue for legislators, but I'm not hearing any major objections, and that would be 5 o'clock as usual, right?
5 o'clock via Zoom. Does that work for you, Matt?
Yes, since Senator Lockman's going to slack off, then I can
Totally. Maybe I'll make an appearance. We'll see how things go that day. It's all going to be, seat of the pants. But so that sounds good. And looks like a pretty standard agenda so far. Minutes, updates. We might want to keep an eye on the collaborative, of course. I know I was obviously it was such a quick update last time. By the time I made it into the meeting, whatever it was, 15 minutes later, so it was over. So I don't know how substantive that was. I was talking to Jim yesterday. It sounds like maybe they're expecting some more big news.
Well, I think by that point, the school districts were supposed to have made their determination if they were going to move forward.
Well, I was hearing maybe not by June 2nd. That would be the question. So I feel like if that happens, it would be good to have the update, but maybe it sounds like it might be at June meetings. So then it would be a little premature.
I'm sorry, what's happening?
Districts are making their decision about participation in the collaborative in their next couple of upcoming meetings.
So
Okay.
from March,
I thought that decision had been made already. Did I miss it?
So from March, so by March, they had to decide if they were going to engage in the conversation. Yep. So not if they were going to participate or not.
Oh, those board conversations were just to engage?
Yeah.
Yep.
So by March, they had to decide if they were going to engage in the conversation. From March to May, there's a group that is working on planning agendas and then going back to the school district. So from the last conversation I've had with John and a couple other folks, so maybe the timeline got pushed back a little bit, but by the end of May, they needed to, the boards had to vote and decide. So I know like Brandywine just met recently. So I don't think that they have made put their decision out to the public, but those things were to be determined and decisions made by the end of May. But it sounds like maybe it's been pushed back a few weeks now.
So the preliminary celebration of sorts was really just that boards were willing to engage in a conversation about maybe participating.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly that.
That's my understanding too. So we're really waiting for their commitment to actually join the collaborative, which I heard could be next month, could be June as well. But I mean, I think probably a good idea to hold a slot for them to, if there is news to report, that would be great to have them offer that at that time, I think. In terms of legislation, I know that Representative Chiquocha is close, I believe, now on the redistricting and governance legislation. So hopefully that will be something that can be presented and discussed. That might be more of a work group update, I suppose. But and I know that it sounds like after our commentary about it in the last meeting that there were quite a few pieces of legislation sort of submitted for consideration on the work group level, I think particularly to the settlement work group. So that's something to consider, whether, just what they have the capacity to engage with between now and June 2nd. So that probably needs a follow-up conversation with settlement folks. Dawn, I see your hand.
There are at least two pieces that that Representative Williams and I are planning to present to the work group. We were planning to present them to the last work group meeting, but it was canceled. The social determinants of health work group, our meeting in April was canceled. So the two pieces are HB or HS1 for HB 144, which is the preschool ratio legislation. And then the other one is not yet, there's not a number for it yet, but it's one that Representative Lambert it's a follow-up piece of legislation to the lead screening bill that passed last year. It's a cleanup bill. So why it's so important to have the support for Reading Consortium is the three of the four school districts, 3 of the 4 zip codes, pardon me, that are most impacted by children exposed to lead and with lead poisoning are in the city of Wilmington. And as you all may know, children who are exposed to lead have permanent brain damage. It's forever, and receive early intervention, special education services, social services support. So I could go on and on, but this is impacting children in the city of Wilmington at a much higher rate than it does other children in the rest of Delaware. And certainly it impacts education because so that bill, once it has a number, I don't know if Representative Lambert will come himself or if he'll share that to share on his behalf.
Okay. And the next social determinants meeting is May 16th. And Jeff, is there room on the agenda to consider legislative endorsements?
Yeah, after the last consortium meeting and you brought forward the full body consortium where you brought forward that legislative topics should run through the work groups. Ray and I and Haley have been talking, and there's going to be, we're going to be having time for that. Yes. I don't know exactly what it's going to look like. Haley, we talked about a variety of ways to approach it because we wanted to not just have every single piece of legislation talked about during our paltry 90 minutes that we have. So we're trying to figure out how we're going to do that. And but we do have a process. There will be time for those things to be discussed. We've been doing that all along. People have been emailing. We've had the health access to health care for all that they presented. Yvette presented something. There were a variety. We've been doing what you were talking about all along. So the format, it's just we wanted to formalize a little bit. Now that legislature's in session, the number just increases. In the fall, it's easy because nobody's really talking about it. Now all of a sudden, it's the list is a mile long.
Yep, sure is.
So we're in good shot. We'll be having a spot for it. I just don't know exactly what it's going to look like.
Okay, that's great. And so, because that's true. I know you guys have definitely been doing that. So maybe we can offer our settlement co-chairs some guidance on good approaches to minimize how much time it eats up.
And so the settlement's been really following anything related to the settlement.
Right.
So we haven't heard too much from others yet.
Okay.
That doesn't mean we won't. But if we do, we'll definitely brainstorm with Jeff and Haley and Ray as well.
Right. Well, and I know that we sort of opened it up in the sense that if something doesn't fit neatly with educators or social determinants, settlement ought to consider it. And so hopefully that didn't open up a big can of worms that will make their lives more difficult. So just want to be mindful.
It almost did, just because the question came up from Margie Lopez Wade about who to ask and where to go, and that was related to the charter, and while it's connected and related, it wasn't directly. And so that's where Haley and Ray and I were having the conversation of how do we navigate that space. And I think we're in a good spot. I think we'll be all right with that.
Okay.
But yeah, you are correct. That was what caught us.
Almost a mess. Okay. All right. Good.
We got it. We're good. We're all good though.
Glad to hear that. Apologies. All right, so hopefully, we'll see, what legislation remains by June 2nd from, the list of things that our work groups have considered and decided to bring forward to the full body. So I would expect that we'll have an opportunity to talk about those things that maybe haven't been passed yet, that we want to, make formal endorsements or, statements of concern or whatever it might be. So that should be pretty interesting and hopefully substantive. And then, for now, work group updates. Yeah, I don't think there's anything else that needs to be on there besides, I think sort of always leaving space for the collaborative and or Secretary Holiday, if he wants to say a few words. I think it's just good to kind of have a placeholder. But if they don't, I think that's okay too. I don't know, Matt, what you think.
The only thing I was thinking was just in terms of other things that we might want to have people talk about. If we wanted to have, I'm wondering as I'm saying it out loud whether it's a good or a bad idea. But for the folks for the providers who have been starting to actually operate some of the programs for which we had recommended funding in the budget. I don't know if it might be a good idea to have one or more of them come in and just talk about sort of what they're doing and what impact it's having. And the only reason that I'm saying it with some hesitance is that there's about to be a brand new, RFP cycle that those same providers are going to be applying for. So I don't know if it's unfair or, looks bad for some reason for them to be getting an audience, when they're about to have to reapply for the same funds. So I throw it out, not even sure that it's a good idea as I say it.
I would wonder about that as well, whether or not we're sort of getting ahead of ourselves if we do that while a lot of, these things are sort of in process and we're putting out a new cycle. I definitely think we want to feature providers soon. And I know our intention is that in the fall that we try to meet in person again, which I think will really change the energy and dynamic of our meetings. Maybe that's an opportunity to maybe have a sort of a more exciting presentation of, what did the beneficiaries of our work look like as an opening of the school year. I don't know. That's what my gut tells me.
And that's be better than anyway, because then the next round of, if all goes well, then the next round of RFPs will have gone out and been awarded by then anyway. So we can also talk, coming down the road.
Yep. That's exactly what I was thinking. We can do a nice, sort of dog and pony show of where we're at and maybe that would give us a little more time to formalize that, or even, maybe do some of those site visits we had wanted to do when Omicron was preventing us, and have some photos and stuff that we can show. So I think that might be a good fall goal.
You just cut and paste everything I just said and put it into our September planning meeting.
There you go. I love that. Unless anyone has any objection. Okay. All right. So looking like a pretty straightforward June 2 meeting, but again, who knows what happens in the next, few weeks that we want to weigh in on, but I think focusing on legislation is a good way to go. And and before we totally move on, I would just sort of add as a footnote to that, just to make sure that we have a budget update, because markup will be over by June 2. And so we can sort of give a stronger sense of where we landed.
I'm not sure exactly where this would be appropriate, but obviously it might not make it into this June 2nd meeting, but is it possible to get an update on how, from DOE, on how learning is going post, coming out of COVID? So, excuse me, previously when they discussed the accelerated learning plan, and for instance, in the summer, they were going to be offering camps and they were going to offer, a variety of opportunities to enrich learning. And I feel like I heard Mark mention this, I don't know if it was when he first came on or kind of prior to that, but really thinking outside the box and looking other learning opportunities outside of the traditional, classroom for students. And I haven't heard anything further with that. And
Yeah.
summer is pretty much here. And for parents, we start planning those things like back in January.
Yeah. Well, and I wonder how much of that programming was actually last summer. Well, basically, so remember we had that meeting
Those
last,
should be ongoing.
right, last May, where we asked them, how are they deploying these federal, right? Jeff, you and were part of that. So, I mean, what I'm hearing maybe is sort of an update. I think we heard a lot of school leaders, superintendents sort of projecting like, this is what this is going to look like, utilizing these federal funds to, address learning
And
loss.
the LEAs have been putting out, their plans, and they've been kind of chugging away. I guess what I'm looking for is a little bit hearing more from how they're being guided from DOE going forward.
No, from DOE specifically, not from the LEA level.
Yeah. So the LEAs, I think, are chugging away what they can do.
Yeah.
I just am missing some of that guidance from the top and what this is going to look like, and even for the next couple of years. So like I said, the summer sessions from conversations I had heard previously, that this was supposed to be an ongoing thing. But as a parent, I have not heard anything of how any of that we can tap into it. And that's
Okay.
in one district. And then, when I worked in another district, I can also say they were not putting out anything. So, I'm just a little curious. There's a big elephant in the room, and I don't think we're talking about it.
I mean, if we want to ask Secretary Holodick to speak specifically to questions that we have, I think that's also appropriate. I mean, I'm happy to give him a platform to talk about whatever he wants, but if we have something specific we want him to speak to, like that, I think it's worth, asking if they could give sort of a general update on, because I think everyone has a sense, pretty clear sense that like it's still a struggle coming out of pandemic times, and it might be nice to ask the department to give us sort of an update on what does that look like from their level. How are they supporting districts? And
Well, even an update on, I think he gave some of his goals when he started in January, and to that point of
right,
we're accelerating. Okay, so where are we now? You gave us what your vision was, but where are we?
I think number one was recovering from the pandemic, right? And so it's like, okay, can we talk about that in specific? Is what you're looking for, some more specifics?
Yes, because I'm also seeing where it's creating larger problems, and I feel like we're talking around it, and if we don't start talking to it, we're in some serious trouble.
Right. And I'm sure particularly in, with all the usual equity disparities that we are used to. Well, I think that's something, I know Haley's away and she usually does this, but Kelly, maybe we can make a note that that's a question or sort of a set of questions that we can, elevate to DOE. And see if that's something that they could speak to us about, or maybe even just give us some info in the meantime. But
Absolutely.
So I'm not sure. I do have a hard stop at 11, but
Yeah.
I do want to just offer up how you ask that question is going to dictate the answer you get, because I can already hear an answer coming that says, well, we're a local control state. The LEAs have their money. You really need to ask them. So
Right.
like what you're asking, you have to ask it very specifically, because that your answer is going to end up getting punted to all of us, and you're going to end up inviting all the chiefs back and asking us to provide for you what's updated or supposed to be updated every 6 months on our website per the ESSER agreement that we have that we're doing. And it's, I know we're due up another 6-month review in January. We had to repost what our new plans are. We're now at the end of the school year. We're building for summer. We're due another review and updating of our ESSER money. So like it depends on you. If you're looking for something, I don't think you can like soft sell it as a broad ask. You really got to go at what is it that you want them to tell you, because otherwise I suspect it'll just get pushed down to the chiefs.
Okay.
To tell you what's going on. That's just
I think that's a great suggestion. So I don't know if maybe you could circle with the chiefs that are on our council and maybe coordinate specific questions or how to frame the question.
Well, that's a fine line for me to, I mean, that's a thing. I mean, welcome to our world, I guess, is what
Right.
I would say. I mean,
The
so, you know,
tightrope.
it's a tightrope to walk. I think, while DOE has been very supportive of the districts by giving great guidance and latitude with the expenditure and use of our funds, I think Secretary Holodick has made very clear that one of his big pushes is summer recovery, right? So that's what I heard him say at several different events that I was at during his transition.
Yeah.
I would recommend picking that one. I'd pick one strand that's
Okay.
really present on the horizon and ask, what does this look like for DOE when you talk about this? And then how is DOE supporting the districts? That's one slice of a bucket
Sure.
of, you know, Joe Jones is doing the whole AC system at Hodson because of their quality.
Yeah.
Like, you're going to get those answers when you ask the question the way you're asking it,
Got
versus
it.
if you want to really target it around one of the threads. That's what I would, that's just my sense, because then that puts back on us what the secretary's priority is. What are we doing about summer? And then that can open up a bigger discussion around that. That's one way to approach it. But the other way is just the laundry list of things that we know are getting done.
Yeah, no. I think
Mhm.
that's excellent. I think that's
I do too.
Kelly, can you help us frame that, and then we'll have Haley, you know, make sure that we're just asking about the summer. What was it? How did you phrase that?
Mark's been calling it, I believe, I've heard him
Summer
say it in at least
recovery.
3 venues, summer learning recovery is
Summer
what he's
learning
calling
recovery.
it. I think that's what he used that at the combined school boards breakfast, the Chiefs spring retreat, and I saw him speak to one other group. I feel like that's one of his 4 priorities: Delaware education, getting teachers to come from Delaware to Delaware, stay in Delaware,
Yep.
summer learning recovery, and there's another bucket he's got. I would zero in on his priorities because those are the things that he's going to be most comfortable speaking about.
And to that point, so like recently I saw that the YMCA had like a big push for hiring and stuff. So some of these things he like maybe happening. So conversations and partnerships with the Y and other organizations similar to that. But I don't know that that's making it down to families and into the community to see what options are and what we're hearing. So for instance, I saw that, and if I wanted to put my son in that, then maybe I could take advantage of that. But I don't know if that was what
Yeah.
was designated from the school. Like I'm still kind of holding out because I'm like, oh, I'm waiting to
Well,
hear
you know
about
what,
this.
Tika, as someone who's watching our summer, our summer program evolve, you can offer the program only when you have the body to teach it. And right now, the
Mhm.
bodies to teach it are far and few between.
Right.
Mhm.
Many of the, you know, you're seeing many of our tried and true summer program agencies are struggling to staff.
Mhm.
Summer CoLab, the Y, Boys and Girls Clubs, you know, and the districts are struggling to just cover 12-month and ESY programs, which they're obligated to provide educational setting for. So that's where they're probably hesitant. You're not hearing about it because people are trying to get the body first before they offer the program and get your money or get whatever it is you're going to do to pay for it. And then it doesn't come to fruition. And then they got to issue refunds because they couldn't staff it. That's a guess. And I'm just throwing out there. I know we're in that space right now because we're usually fully booked for our summer by now because we're up and running, and we're not because we don't.
Now, yeah, so that part I understand. And even like, you know, from a parent's perspective, we start planning back, like I said, in January. It's just the fact that there's things that I haven't heard. And then the things that I have heard, I'm like, okay, well, is that this? So I just want a little bit of clarity on what the expectation should be. Because honestly, if he does have a big push for summer recovery, I don't see how that is how impactful that can be with this summer.
Yeah.
Well, it totally. And even I would argue the next summer coming up is equally going to be as challenging, just from a sidebar of like the amount of staff who are retiring and resigning this year was large and the backfill was low because there's not a lot of candidates. That trend is only going to continue. So it's going to be exacerbated, right? It's going to exponentially
Yep.
Exodus. And so this is going to be summer
to that-
learning.
and to
summer
that
learning
point-
coverage is going to look different.
Yeah.
Exactly. And to that point, I don't know if like a SWOT has been done or something similar to that, or Prometheus process to kind of highlight some of those other variables that could be making the outcome different than what it would have been in the past if we had done things that way. So
There's a good
to the point-
question for the secretary, right?
Yeah.
Like what is the state doing, DOE doing to help support the districts in this environment where they know the staffing tension? So maybe you've narrowed down a task for them to do that's not going to just end up getting work passed on to the districts to collect and gather evidence and stuff. Because that's what's going to potentially happen. And I don't say in some cases that's good, but in other times, like right now, it's a scramble right now for most of the districts.
Yeah.
Guaranteed.
All right. Well, that sounds like a good topic for us to cover then. It sounds very
I'm
timely.
sorry, I need to jump off for
No
another
problem, Jeff.
meeting. And
Thank
social determinants, we are planning to meet. We're all good. We'll be on track. Haley's got us in line. We're
All
good.
right, good. See you later.
Oh, and Matt has us in line too. Matt's keeping us on point.
Matt's always on top. All right, good. See you, Jeff. Have a good day.
So sorry, I didn't mean to hijack your agenda, but I do think it's
No,
an important
that's
topic.
this is why it says anything else to add, and I think you did it. did it.
Haley and I and Shelley and whoever else will work on getting questions together and run it by you all before we send anything.
All right, cool.
you.
All right, let's move into our work group update. Sounds like we'll be pretty quick here. Social determinants, we got that covered. Coming up, settlement is meeting on May 23rd. So, Kelly, I guess who's working with settlement? Is it Haley?
I am. We both
You
are. I met
Okay.
with them on, I think it was Wednesday. I met with
Yeah.
Chuck and Aaron and planned out the next meeting, got an update from Shannon Ari about the ombudsperson legislation and everything. And we'll
Right.
see if anything gets brought to us.
I know that was getting a little tense, so hopefully we'll be able to resolve that. Let me know if you need anything. And is the general, they're prepared to address any legislation that falls under there? Okay.
And we're going to also, again, follow and just make sure, see if there's anything related to the settlement itself that they need to bring forward as well.
All right, excellent. And then my understanding with educators really, are just continuing to engage with the budget process to make sure that we're able to deploy those funds. I don't think there's any legislation that the educators chairs are specifically fielding or need to convene anyone around. So I think that's fine. Governance, we did a check-in, was that last week? Again, still have no sense of time. But I do know Nabdi and I talked earlier this week about the, sort of finalizing the timeline, which is, seems like it should be cut and dry, right? But finalizing the timeline on the legislation to re-up the redistricting powers. And so that should be able to be filed, I think before the June meeting. So we'll be able to talk about that. And I think that's all that there is to report on governance at this time. I know we had talked about a work plan, but do we think we'll have something by June 2?
Haley and I are working on it to work with the co-chairs. Once we see a bit more, we can add to that work plan.
Okay. That'd be wonderful. But if all we have is legislation, we will cope, but it would be wonderful to be able to project out for folks. I think also being able to talk about why the legislation has the dates that it has is relevant to being able to share some preliminary work plan. I actually, as I mentioned, was on with Jim Simmons yesterday, and we talked too about making sure that we are, having conversations between the collaborative and Reading about that kind of stuff too. So hopefully before that's out, there will be some messaging and some just, I don't know if alignment's the right word, but it's the only word I can think of, sort of alignment on messaging, at least around our plans and what they are up to. So that's all I know on that one. Any questions? Okay. Well, if not, I don't think we have any public today. Do we? Am I missing someone? All right. No, I think it's just the 7 of us. All right. Well, with that, almost got you guys out at 11. Just obviously be in touch if anything comes up. TK, we've been trying to get on the phone together for like months, so maybe we can make that happen today or this weekend. That would be a miracle.
Yep.
And other than that, everyone have a beautiful weekend.
Thanks, guys. You too.
You too, bye.
Take care.
Bye.